So there's going to be two ways that we can solve rational equations today. The first one, method number one to do this, is we are going to cross multiply. And this is nothing new. Excuse me, cross multiply. So you guys know how to cross multiply. When you have a fraction equal to a fraction, or even a fraction equal to a whole number, okay, so if it's like this, fraction equals fraction, or you have fraction equals whole number, or actually integer, we'll say. Let's say integer. In that setup, you can always cross multiply, okay? So let me show you what I mean by that. If I have a over b equals c over d, and I want to solve for one of those variables, my first step is to say that AD equals BC, right? We're just cross multiplying within that proportion. So if we plug in some numbers with this, here's what you're doing. If I have 5 over 4x equals 2. Okay, now a lot of people look at that and they go, I can't cross multiply that. I don't have two fractions to do the cross multiplication with. What do you need to do to make it two fractions? Put it over 1. Okay, so if I make this 2 over 1, now I can cross multiply. So I would get 5 equals 4x times 2 is 8x, and then divide by 8 on both sides. So I get x equals 5/8. Okay, be real careful with that. For some reason, people always think the bigger number has to go on top, and they tell me it's 8/5. So just pay attention to what you have going on there. I know you know, but for some reason, people just rush through it and don't always divide the right direction. Okay, so if you have this, 3 over x plus 2 is equal to -1. And we want to solve for x here. Again, think of it as -1 over 1. We can cross multiply. So if we cross multiply this, you get -1 times x plus 2 equals 3. Make sure you distribute that. So -x minus 2 equals 3. And it's really just very simple algebra that you're doing for most of these problems when it's the cross multiplication. So add 2. -x equals 5, divide by -1, and you get x is -5. Okay. If you ever want to check your answer, what can you do? Plug that back in. If I plug in a -5 there, 3 over -5 plus 2 is -3. 3 over -3 is -1, so I know it checks out. Okay? Always a good idea to check it. Example 3. There are, I think there's 9. Not 9 of these, 9 total though. Well, I'm going to give you another method. Okay, so let's say it looks like this, and you want to solve for x. What do you do? Put it over 1. Nice try though. And cross multiply. So 1 times 3x minus 4 is just 3x minus 4. 5 times x plus 1, I'm going to just distribute right now, but you're multiplying 5 parentheses x plus 1, so that would be 5x plus 5. Okay, move the 3x over. You get 2x. Move the 5 over. You get -9, and then divide by 2. So x would be, you can call it -9/2, or you can call it -4.5. I kind of like decimals better, so I would call it -4.5. All right, one more of these, and this one's slightly different. You got to pay attention to one little detail here. Let's say you have 5 over x equals 10x over 50. When you cross multiply this, what do you get? 10x squared. Okay, 10x squared. X times x is x squared, not 2x, right? 10x squared equals 5 times 50 is 250. So we're going to divide by 10, and you get x squared equals 25. So what's your answer? Plus or minus. Good. Don't forget to take the positive and negative of that answer. So plus or minus 5. Okay? Yeah.
In this example, could you reduce the 10x over 50?
And call it x over 5 right off the bat? Mm-hmm. Totally could. Good on that?
Yes.
Okay. Method number 2. And this one is probably slightly more challenging. I think it makes the solving simpler. Well, I don't know. It definitely, the process simplifies your problem quite a bit, okay? But how you do it maybe takes a little more thought. So method number 2 is you are going to multiply by the least common denominator. The reason we do this is it clears all your fractions. So you won't have any fractions left when you go to solve these, as long as you do it the right way, okay? So we're trying to get rid of our fractions. You won't be able to cross multiply, which is why we need a method 2 for solving this, because you just don't have the option to cross multiply anymore. So here's what you're gonna do with this. Example number 5. Your problem is 1 over 2x minus 1 over 5x equals 1/2. Okay, now in order to cross multiply, you need two fractions set equal to each other, which we don't have. And yes, there are ways you could go about doing that and make it that way, but it's a whole lot more work than what I'm gonna show you right now. So to do this, we said you're gonna multiply everything, right? Because if you're gonna multiply something, it's gotta be done to everything so that you don't change the value of your answer. So you're gonna multiply everything you see by the least common denominator. Least common denominator being what we talked about in the last lesson. If I took all of these, what denominator could I get from 2x, 5x, and 2? What would that be? 10x, right? 10x would be the least common denominator. I could multiply this one by 5, I could multiply this one by 2, and this one by 5x, and I would get 10x, okay? That's not what we're doing. We're multiplying the whole thing by 10x. So what we're gonna do, I always like to put brackets around it to just remind myself that the whole thing is getting multiplied. So we're gonna multiply this whole thing, and then I usually put what I'm multiplying by up top because you are multiplying by a numerator, essentially, right? If I'm multiplying by 10x over 1, I'm only gonna multiply those top numbers. So think of it as we're multiplying by 10x. I would get, when I multiply this by 10x, I would get 10x over 2x, right? Subtract, now multiply this one. What would I get? 10x over 5x. And that equals, what would I get here? 10x over 2. Okay, so what happens is, now we can do a whole lot of simplifying of these fractions. 10x over 2x is what? 5, right? Your x's equal 1, your 10 over 2 equals 5. So 5 minus 10x over 5x is what? 2 equals, what's 10x over 2? 5x, right? 10 divided by 2 is 5. That x doesn't go anywhere because we didn't divide by an x. So this is your new problem, and now from here, it's lickety-split, right? This is a quick one. So 5 minus 2 is 3 equals 5x, and we divide by 5. So x is 3/5. Does that make sense? So you're getting rid of the fractions.
So we like never distribute to the denominator, just the numerators?
Yeah, it's not a distributing, we're multiplying, right? So, okay, I see what you're saying. Yes, we are distributing like 10x times that thing, but your 10x is a numerator because it's 10x over 1. So you need to multiply by the numerators. Yes. Okay, next one. Example 6. So we have 5 over x plus 3/4 equals negative 7 over 4x. So again, the whole thing needs to get multiplied by the same thing. What is your least common denominator? So you have an x, you have a 4, and you have a 4x. It would be 4x, right? That's your least common denominator. So we're going to multiply the whole thing by 4x. So this becomes what? 20x over x. Then go here. 12x over 4. And then here. Negative 28x over 4x. Now here's the thing. These are still going to be fractions like this, but once you simplify this, you should not have any fractions left. If you do, you didn't pick the right least common denominator to multiply by, okay? So if we simplify this, x over x is 1, so we're left with just 20. What does this become? That's 3x equals what? Negative, so 28 divided by 4 is negative 7. X divided by x is 1, so it would just be negative 7. Okay, then solve. So take away your 20 from both sides, and you get negative 27 equals 3x. And then you're going to divide by 3. So x equals negative 9. Good on that? Okay. What? You did. This one gets a little bit fancier. It looks like this. X minus 10 over x equals negative 3. Can't cross multiply. Can you find a least common denominator? X, right? So think of this, if it's helpful to you, you can just think of this as over 1, right? You don't need to do that, but you can if that helps you to see it a little better. So we are going to multiply everything by x, okay? So if we do that here, what do we get? X squared. You don't need the 1 because we're going to get rid of the 1 anyway, right? Minus 10x over x equals negative 3x. Okay, so if you simplify this, x over x is 1, so it's x squared minus 10 equals negative 3x. Does anyone see what we need to do with this one? You gotta do, wait, what did you say? The star method, right. You're factoring essentially, right? So we're gonna move that 3x over. We're gonna add 3x and just move it this way. So x squared plus 3x minus 10 equals 0, and we're gonna factor. So from here, if you do star method, okay, negative 10, what can you multiply to get negative 10 that you can add to get 3?
Negative 5.
You would do a negative 3. What did I just say? Negative 2, sorry, not 3, and a positive 5. So you would get x minus 2 and x plus 5 equals 0. So what is your answer? Positive 2, negative 5. Questions on that? So you might have to factor every now and then. If you get a quadratic, right? If you get an x squared plus something x plus some constant, you're gonna have to factor a little bit. Okay, 2 more. Let's do number 8 here. So you have 2 over x squared equals 6 over 4x minus 1 over 4. What is your least common denominator? 4x squared, right? You're looking for these 3 numbers, the least number combo that they can become. So if we multiply everything by 4x squared, I got to do that here. I get what? 8x squared over, x squared equals, multiply it here, you get 24x squared over 4x minus, and then that last one, 4x squared over 4. Start reducing then. What do you get here? First one. X squareds are going to be 1, so this is just 8. How about this one? 24x squared divided by 4x. So you get 6 here, right? And then x squared over x is just x minus x squared. Okay, so again, you have a quadratic here. If we move things around, move the x squared to the front, so x squared minus 6x plus 8 equals 0, right? I'm just moving these guys over. So what can you multiply to get 8 that you can add to get a negative 6? Negative 4 and negative 2, right? So that would be x minus 4, x minus 2. So your answer, if that has to equal 0, x would be what? 4 and 2. Okay? Questions on that? All right, last one. Example 9. Let's say you have 7 over 4x plus 2/3 equals 5 over 3x plus 5/6. This one maybe takes a little more thought than the others. What would your least common denominator be? So 4x, 3x, and 6 all have to go into what? 12x. Good. So if we multiply everything by 12x, then we're going to distribute. 12x times 7 would be 84x over 4x plus 12x times 2, that'd be 24x over 3 equals 5 times 12x is 60x over 3x, and then plus 12 times 5 is 60x over 6. And then we simplify from there. What does your first one become? 21. Then what? That would be 8x, 24x divided by 3 equals 20. X divided by x is 1 plus, what's 60x divided by 6? That would be 10x. Okay, and then from there solve for x. So if we take away 8x from both sides, you get 2x over here. Take away 20 from both sides, you get 1 over here. So 1 equals 2x. We just divide by 2. So your x is 1/2. Okay? Any questions on that? All right.